Our interview this morning is with Vern Donoho. Vern was born in Mount Vernon, Illinois in January of 1947. He served in the United States Army during 1967 and 1968. His highest rank attained was E4. This interview was conducted at Burleson, Texas on Friday, February the 24th, 2011. My name is Dale Dexheimer. I'm not related to Vern. Also in the room we have Mrs. Donoho, Hattie, and we have Milton Gibson and Gary Burton, who are our videographers. This interview is conducted for the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress and for Operation Remember, City of Burleson, Texas. And with that introduction, Vern, you can tell us your story of the U.S. Army.
All right, thank you. I was in junior college in Mount Vernon, Illinois, and of course the war in Vietnam was going pretty strong at that time in 65, 66. And I was a full-time student, so therefore I was exempt from the draft. But I had a class that I didn't really care for, one single class, and so in fact I think it was psychology, and so I dropped that class. And as a result of dropping that class, I fell a half a credit under a full-time student. And it didn't take any time for me to hear from my local agent that I was going to be drafted. So that's kind of how that all started. After finding out that was happening, I got married 30 days before going overseas, or before shipping out to service. We were told together at the square in Mount Vernon, Illinois, and a bus would pick us up. And when we did that, they loaded us up on a bus and they took us to St. Louis, Missouri, where we were inducted into the Army. It was a typical induction, several, I don't know, 100, 125 guys all at the same time from all of the surrounding area. And after our induction, they put us on a bus and shipped us to Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri, southern Missouri, and that is where I had my basic training. Basic training was fairly easy because I had played basketball and been pretty active in my high school years, and so it wasn't too difficult for me. One of the things that I remember about basic training is that we didn't have barracks. They were so full of new recruits that they put up large tents outside the main barracks, big, nice brick buildings, but I got to stay in a tent outside, and a lot of it during the winter months, at least the colder fall months. But they began to train us in combat and prepare us for what was obviously going to happen to anybody that was drafted in that time in history. And after finishing our training at Fort Leonard Wood, they told us that they wasn't going to give us any time off because they wanted to ship us on to our advanced training. And by doing that, they thought they would get us home in time to be with our families for Christmas, which was coming up in approximately 3 months. And so we didn't like that, but we decided that we would go along with that since that would get us home for Christmas. So I was put on a bus again, and we were traveling to Fort Polk, Louisiana. Quite a place was Fort Polk. It was very humid. The training there was very rigorous. It was obvious that this was the advanced training and that they was getting us ready to go overseas. So we hung in there and got the training, and came time to finally get our orders. We were all of us that went down there were really excited about getting to go home and be at home for Christmas. And we got our orders, and we had a few days off, but about a week, probably someplace around the 15th or so of December, we was to report back to duty. So I was left to travel on my own out to California, and had never done anything like that, so it was quite an experience. But traveled out to San Francisco. Had an uncle that lived in Oakland, so I called him after I got out there, and he come up and got me, and I spent the night with him, and then came back the next morning and got on a jet, and we began the travel to Vietnam. I believe on the way over we stopped in Hawaii, and I think that maybe that was the only stop going over. But as we traveled over, it was interesting to note all of our attitudes. Everybody was pretty somber, not much cutting up, not much joking around, but it was obvious that our minds were on where we were going. So I flew into Saigon, Vietnam, just about a week before Christmas, maybe even less. From there, we was bused down just to the south end of town, I believe, to some very large base, and that's where we spent the next 3 or 4 days as we got acclimated to the country and to the weather and so on. And it was hot. We needed some time to get acclimated because it was just very, very hot. The thing that I remember about that base that we was sent to was that we found out a day or two later that it was a very large ammo base. And almost nightly we had mortar rounds being fired coming into the base, trying to destroy the ammo that was stored there. And so it was a pretty exciting time. Another thing I remember about the base was immediately, well, the day before Christmas and Christmas Day, instead of being home with my family, I was pulling KP in Vietnam. And so I was not the happiest of campers regarding that. But anyway, I got through that, and after our days of kind of preparing ourselves and our bodies for the weather, we had another traveling adventure to go on. And so they loaded us in the back of deuce and a halves, covered deuce and a halves, and we took off over road, which I thought seemed very, very strange to me that in a war zone in a place like Vietnam that we would travel up and down the roads of the country. But anyway, we went up to a place called Chu Lai, and at Chu Lai, or right close to Chu Lai, is the area is an area that's just covered with agricultural of various kinds, a lot of rice, obviously, and different things that they grew there. But out in the middle of nowhere is this mountain called Dui Ba Dien, and it was known for the Viet Cong activity on the top of it, and we were there to deal with that and to run patrols in the area. We all begin to get to know each other. We begin to bond as a unit. We begin to understand how we could live with each other and try our best to get through the year that was ahead of us. They began to send us out on missions, short missions, small missions, where we would go out and patrol through the day and then come back in, or we would go out on ambushes. We'd go out to a particular point and set up an ambush, sit there all night, and then the next morning come back into base. One of the things that I remember most clearly about being at this area of Dui Ba Dien was a helicopter crash that took place up on the top of Dui Ba Dien. There was, I believe, three people in the helicopter, a pilot, co-pilot, and then a gunman. And they crashed up on top of it, and the word kind of got out that it had happened, and they was trying to decide what to do about it. Well, finally, out of all the companies and platoons and people that were there, my platoon got chosen to climb up Dui Ba Dien and recover those bodies. It was supposed to be a fairly easy thing, except the climb. It's a very strenuous, hard climb. The mountain was literally made out of big boulders, and so you're just constantly climbing from one boulder to the next, going up to the top. It had kind of a saddle look to it, and we went up to the saddle part of it, the center of the saddle, and then we went on up on pretty well on top of the mountain. Finally, found the wreckage. Our job was to recover the bodies, put them in bags, and then they would send a helicopter up to pick up the bodies so that they could be recovered and come home. However, when we got there and found the site and recovered the bodies, for some reason the helicopters that was supposed to come after us could not make it, weather related, or they didn't want them flying up there. Anyway, they could not come and recover the bodies, so we had to literally carry those body bags back down to the base of the mountain. One of the most difficult things I think that I got into while I was in Vietnam. But we spent quite a bit of time there patrolling, and again setting up ambushes at nights, and just patrolling the area. After that, I believe we moved. Sometimes the timing of events kind of escaped me, but I believe we moved to over to the coastal area and a little farther north. They put us in an area that had been pretty active with Viet Cong and a lot of skirmishes and a lot of things going on, and somehow we ended up setting our base up right on the beach, just in the trees off of the sand. The area that we was in was totally sandy. The foxholes that we dug were in sand. Of course, we made the sandbags and fixed the foxholes up like we was going to stay there for a long time. But we were allowed to occasionally go down to the beach and go swimming and have a good time down there, and so that was an interesting time. One of the things that I remember about that area is that the sand. It didn't matter whether you were showering, it didn't matter whether you was sleeping or whether you was dressing or whether you was eating. Sand was everywhere, and you just could not rid yourself of sand. We were becoming fairly seasoned by this time, and would find things to do to entertain us, and so occasionally we'd find our way to the kitchen, and we might borrow a chicken from the shaft and take it back to our tent and find a way to cook it ourselves there at the tent, and so that was kind of fun. But while we was there, we hooked up with an amphibious group. Don't remember just exactly who they were, but just below us was a river that went in country. And so they hooked us up with this amphibious group, and we were to travel up that river to a community that was built on an island quite a ways up that river. This was a friendly community. However, they had a lot of infiltration of Viet Cong. They were harassed by mortar and things like that, and they had called upon the Army to help them to keep their area safe. And so we went with the amphibious guys, went up the river, and we got up to a place a little while before dark, and we set up camp just outside the city. Made a parameter with the amphibious machines in a circle and us filling in between each one of them. Everything was going great. Night come on, and of course at nighttime you'd usually be in a foxhole or in an area with 3 other people, and you'd take turns on guard duty. Well, that particular night, one person out of my 3, and I still don't know which one, I know it wasn't me, one person did not wake the other person, fell asleep on guard duty, or something happened. I never received a call to get up and to go on guard duty, and I was the last of the 3 that was supposed to do that. Anyway, for some reason, in the middle of the night, we were called out. They decided to move the amphibious group and us to another area. And so there we were, all 3 asleep, and they were loading up and heading out. Somehow that all happened without one of us waking up and without us getting run over. But we woke up very early the next morning, laying here in this field with absolutely nobody else around us. And we were pretty concerned about it. We talked, tried to decide what to do. We walked into the city, found a guy who told us he was the mayor of the city and he would help us. They put us in a boat, and another Vietnamese took us down the river, and we saw a base off in a distance that we had responsibilities to guard at times. So we had him pull over, and we got out and walked over to that base and got back where we was feeling a little more safe. So anyway, that was quite an experience. We obviously got called in before our CO, and then probably more important, I believe that our sergeant, the platoon sergeant, got into some serious problems and maybe even lost a pay grade because he left us there. But it was a concern being stuck out there, just the three of us all by ourselves. So anyway, that pretty well covers what we did there. We did a lot of ambushes, had some serious incidents while we was out on ambush occasionally. But after that, they decided to move us again, and they moved us farther north. And it seemed like every time that we would move further north, things would become a little more dangerous, a little more difficult. So we never looked forward to a move because it was always into an area that was probably worse than we were coming from. So I don't remember just where we moved, what community we was around, but we moved to a fairly good base, well-established base, and had responsibility to set up a perimeter around the base, and we spent an awful lot of time out on different missions. They would fly us in, usually by Hueys. We would spend any place from a week to 10 days out in the bush, out in the fields, on patrol. One of the things that I really remember was the monsoon season and how difficult it was to operate in the monsoon season. We had rain and rain and rain, never ceasing, never stopping, on a daily basis. Usually it would not rain until early afternoon, early evening, but then it would rain all night, and then during the morning time, noon time, part of the afternoon, the temperature would go way high, and of course the humidity and everything was just tough. So it's very, very difficult to operate in those conditions. At the time, I believe I was carrying a machine gun at that time. I had been a rifleman carrying ammunition for a machine gun before that, and had also carried a M79 launcher. But it was just so difficult because the rain all the time, trying to keep the weapon dry, mud everywhere, trying to keep it clean. it was just really, really difficult. I remember when we would be out on patrol and we'd come in at night and all be just soaked and trying to get something to eat and trying to figure out what we was going to do. And we had sea rations at that time, and we would open up cans, and before we could eat them, they would fill up with rain, and we would all be soaked and be so it would turn off really cold, and we'd try to warm up so that we could get some sleep. But at that time, there really wasn't much. But it was pretty rough during that time. One of the things that they had us doing during this time was taking us up to a mountain that was where base was set up, and it had that mountain had been overrun several times by the North Vietnam Regular Army, and they experienced mortars all the time coming in. It was not a good place to be. While up there, we would go out on patrol and we'd try to set up ambushes where we thought we might catch them coming to fire the mortars. One night, while we was out in the field on an ambush, I think to this day that someone accidentally set off a claymore mine, and immediately everybody started firing the weapons and shooting and going at everybody waking up and scurrying to get behind something and beginning to cover their area. And as a result of that, then we retreated a little bit to an area just behind where we were. And as we was sitting there after an hour or so, we heard voices off behind us of people moving and traveling. And so at the proper time, we were called on to fire in that direction, and so we did that. And then later, they chose 2 or 3 people to go out into that area and see what had happened. And what happened was, apparently, I don't know. Again, it's one of those things we'll never know. But apparently, it was a group of ladies that was moving from one place to another, and we had fired on them, unknowing that that's what was taking place. So anyway, there's a lot of experiences, a lot of difficult times in Vietnam that a lot of people had to deal with and had to live through. When it became time for me to begin to think about being a short timer and ready to come back to the States. Oh, by the way, I didn't mention it, but I want to. About halfway through my service, I was given a week off to travel to some place and have a little relaxation. In fact, they called it R&R, rest and relaxation. And so I went to Hawaii, and my wife came to Hawaii met me there. We had a great time. One of the things that I remember about that trip was walking down the sidewalk, and something made a big loud noise. And before she knew what had happened, before my wife knew what had happened, I was behind a trash can there trying to protect myself. So it becomes something that was just, you just did. It was a part of your life. So anyway, as it come to the end of my tour, I finally got the opportunity to leave country just a few days early, and traveled back to one of the main cities, I believe maybe Da Nang, and boarded a plane and headed back to the States. Earlier I told you how somber and quiet everybody was going over. I wanted to, at this time, tell you what a different experience that was coming home, because everybody was happy and real excited about getting home, and just excited about knowing that the year was over for them. So anyway, coming home, I stopped in, I believe I stopped in Guam, and somehow we ended up flying into Anchorage, Alaska. And I remember getting off the plane there. This was probably early December. I remember getting off the plane there, and very, very cold, below zero. And here I'd been in a country that was running 100, 110, very hot, very humid. And so that was quite a wake-up call to us to come back into that kind of situation. But it didn't hurt us too much because it was pretty dry in Alaska. So anyway, we went through the process of coming back in the country, and got our orders. We traveled down. We flew down to Seattle and then traveled down just south of Seattle, and that's where we was processed back into the States. After that, we went to the airport and caught a plane and flew back to St. Louis. In doing that, and in landing at St. Louis, I got off the plane there, and I just had the chills so bad because the humidity was so high, and it was really cold. It wasn't as cold as it was in Alaska, but it affected me much more severely because of the humidity in the air. But got the shivers and just couldn't hardly stand it. Finally, my family got there, my mom, my dad, my wife. Pretty somber, pretty quiet time going back home to Mount Vernon, but that was really a neat time in my life was to get back. In closing up, I had about 6 months left of active duty. About 6 months training in the beginning, a year in Vietnam, and about 6 months left because I was a draftee. I had 2 years of service. So what do you do with a Vietnam vet that has spent a year in country as a combat person? What do you do with them when you bring them back to the States? Well, one of the most amazing things to me in being in service was that they took us vets, they put us at Fort Carson, Colorado, and we continued to play combat games, Army games, going out in the field, and things like that. I did become, at Fort Carson, I got the opportunity to become a anti-personnel tank driver. And so that was kind of interesting, and I enjoyed playing the war games as a driver of that anti-personnel carrier. So it was a very tough time. I did not see action nearly as much as some guys in Vietnam. I did not have the deep emotional stress that some people had that come back from Vietnam, but it was certainly tough. One of the things I'd like to share with you in the ending was that while in Vietnam, one of the duties that we had was to provide a parameter for CB workers who were clearing land, forest, in an area that had been sprayed with Agent Orange. After returning to the States, I developed a pretty severe case of diabetes, and just kind of lived with it for a while. But then I began to hear that Agent Orange, along with causing some very serious health problems with veterans, also was causing a lot of diabetes. And so I got in touch with my the VA at Iowa City, Iowa, which is where I was living at that time, and began the process of being determined eligible for disability. Sometime about 2001 or so, I was determined to be totally disabled, unable to be employed, and and have continued to be compensated by my government for that, for which I'm very very thankful. So that's my story. It's been interesting to share it with you. I hope that something that I have said will help somebody else, or somebody else will see it and help them remember what they've been through. Thank you for the time that you've given me.
Very good.
Thank you.
A couple questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
Vern. When you went to San Francisco, here you are, you're a boy, 20, maybe 21 years old.
20,
Never been anywhere on
19
your
maybe,
own?
yeah.
You found your own way to San Francisco. How'd you get out there?
I flew out there. I went to, family took me to St. Louis. I flew standby, had to wait in St. Louis a little bit, left early so that I knew I'd get out there in time. So I flew into San Francisco, quite an experience. Just the airport. I didn't get out in the city any, but just to be this 19-year-old boy alone in San Francisco, not knowing where to go or what to do, was quite an experience. And then finally, I decided, well, I don't know what else to do. I'll call my uncle. And I think I said that he'd come after me, but what actually happened is I caught a cab from the airport and that they took me the probably 45-minute drive, maybe even longer than that, down to Oakland, where my uncle lived. So it was quite an experience.
I'm surprised you had enough money to pay a cab to go that far.
It cost quite a bit, yeah. Of course, back then it didn't cost as much as it does now.
You go out of San Francisco, and they probably took you up to Travis Air Force Base, where they put you on that plane and took you to Hawaii and Guam, and on you went. So you'd been in the Army for 6 months?
Approximately 6 months.
And there you are in Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about it, we got juice? When you think about it, Vern, here you are, a kid 20 years old, in Vietnam. You're in the middle of a war.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, at 20, you were sort of bulletproof, weren't you?
To some extent. When we first got in country, just not really aware of the danger, feeling somewhat like, we had been trained to be combat soldiers, and therefore we kind of felt like we were ready for anything and everything, and so there was certainly in our hearts and in our minds there was fear. It was always there in the back of your head. Of course, when you're around a bunch of guys, you don't let that come out. And so we all just dealt with it. We all just had to deal with it the best that we could.
Let me ask you one more thing here. You did a lot of patrols, and the thing that I kept hearing over and over, ambushes.
Mm-hmm.
When you went on an ambush, platoon strength, company strength, how many of you went out on an ambush?
Ambush was usually a platoon or less. Usually a fairly small group.
10, 15 guys?
10, 15, maybe any place from 7 to 12, let's say, someplace in that neighborhood. Usually a platoon sergeant or a squad leader, and 5, 6 other guys, and we would leave after dark through the perimeter, walk out to a designated area. We would set up there for the night, and we would wait for opportunities to find the enemy in movement by night and take them out in that manner. Usually we would go to places that the intelligence had really anticipated, or they had seen movement in the area ahead of time.
When you went out on these ambushes, this was supposed to be a secret thing. Obviously, you're going to ambush, and the theory is that the other guy doesn't know you're there and you're going to surprise him. You think in most cases that was true? Or do you think the other guys maybe had did they have some inkling that maybe you were there?
It's really hard. We never knew.
Certainly they had people who hung around the base, houseboys and what have you, and
they did.
You were never sure which side that houseboy was on.
They always had people that were around the base. They may be friendly, but we never really knew that. And the other thing about an ambush is that you set up not in a parameter, but in a straight line. Everything's out in front of you, and that's where it's anticipated. So to some extent, you're always exposed to the backside of the ambush, not knowing what was going on there, and so that was always a pretty difficult duty to go out on the ambushes.
You do typically one ambush, you yourself be involved in one per week, maybe?
At times it was probably one a week. At other times we would be going out on these long patrols for a week or 2 weeks at a time. Well, we would jump on Hueys. We would be airlifted into an area, and then we would go from point A to point B on patrol. Not only did they move us around in Hueys, but sometimes they moved us around in the Chinooks. As infantrymen, we never liked to travel in the Chinooks because you can never see what you're going into. In a Huey, you sat there with your legs dangling out the door watching the scenery go by, but in a Chinook, you was closed in and you could never see what was going on around you. And so they would land, drop the gate, and you had to get out of there regardless of what was happening. So we always preferred the Huey transportation.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Thank you for spending the
Thank
time with
you.
us today, and thank you for your time and service.
Thank
I
you.
would say, happy to hear that you think the VA did the right thing.
Very, very fair. Very.
Certainly, you never get your health back totally,
Yeah.
Vern, but on the other hand, you feel that at least they made the right step.
That is right. I do believe that. Yeah.
Good. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you.